We were told the boys had been neglected. Details of this came out in the court hearings that followed. The youngest was found wandering the streets in a very dirty diaper. We thought that was horrible, and little did we know that this was nothing compared to the horror that was to come. The boys' fits of anger became more frequent and violent the older they got. The oldest was very smart and defended Michelle completely. Both younger boys said they saw him and Michelle having sex. When I asked the social worker, how is that even physically possible in a boy that young, they assured me it was possible, and I didn't want to hear any more after that.
She's referring to the biological mother of these three little boys. Now this mother is up for parole in Louisiana. The DA comes out to speak, and it is powerful. We are going to unpack it with the details at the end.
So, Michelle Littlefield, you're classified as a first felony offender. You're currently serving a 30-year sentence. You were sentenced June 15th, 2005. 2 counts of molestation of a juvenile. You received 15 years on each of those sentences running consecutively. Also, 2 counts of cruelty to juveniles, 2 counts, 10 years on each of those running concurrent with the 15 years consecutive sentences. Your parole eligibility date was February 4th, 2013. You are not eligible to earn good time, and you have a full term date, February 8th, 2033. Is all that accurate information?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you answer any questions Ms. Ledoux may have?
Good morning, Ms. Littlefield.
Yes, ma'am.
How old were you when this crime was committed?
31.
31 years old. Had you, were you or had you been?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? You broke up a little bit.
Okay. Were you or had you been married at the point that this crime was committed?
No, ma'am. Well, I was divorced.
Okay. You had 3 sons. Were they by your husband? Were they by the same person or?
No, ma'am.
So how many fathers were there?
3.
And were any of them your ex-husbands?
Yes, ma'am. My middle son, Jesse.
Okay. What was your relationship with your co-defendant? What was the relationship?
I employed him to watch the children while I went to school and worked full time. And he was like responsible for any household stuff that needed to be done, repairs and the like.
How did you choose him for that position? Is this somebody that you knew and had knowledge of their character, or how did you choose this person?
My mother-in-law referred him to me. She knew him and his family, had watched him grow up and knew he was good with his siblings, children, his nieces and nephews, the neighborhood kids that were in that area. So she referred him to me.
I will say, for the record, reading your the arrest report was very, very difficult for me.
Yes, ma'am.
How long did the alleged or the crime, how long did these crimes take place? Over a period of months?
I believe it was like a 10-month time period, ma'am.
I noticed that you have you ever appealed your case? You've appealed your case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you maintain your innocence to this day, or?
I maintain the fact that I did not see anything, but that does not release me from the culpability. Because at the end of the day, it was my bad decision to bring this person into my home. And not bother to check when I was told, oh, everything is fine. Everything is fine. And then when I did see my kids and, hey, how's it going, guys? Like on a day off, and they didn't say anything. It was because, I'm sorry,
I have to interrupt, but they did admit that you knew.
again, I did not know. Had I have known, I would have immediately intervened, removed them from the house and gone to the nearest law enforcement, police station, fire department, whoever, because I believe my children when they say that happened.
Can you tell me where your children are today?
I know where my oldest is, Justin, but Jesse and Thomas, I don't know where they are at.
And Justin is residing with your father, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure we're going to hear more in a little bit about your programs while you've been incarcerated. You have availed yourself of lengthy educational programs. So what were you going to college or school for when you left your children?
Carpentry, woodworking, furniture making, cabinet making.
So while they were being cared for by this man, that's the program you were going for?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So had you ever had long-term employment? Apparently you were working. What kind of employment did you have?
I worked at Walmart, ma'am. I was a cashier and also a stocking employee.
So when you say, when I saw my sons, I asked them how it was going. You didn't see them very often while you were working, caring for them?
No, ma'am. I had to be at school for 7 a.m., got out of school at 3, had to be to work for 5 p.m., and did not get off until 1 o'clock in the morning.
We have a lot of people who want to speak in support and opposition, and I'll go ahead and Mr. Not to retain my questioning if I need to later. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me just ask a couple of questions, Ms. Littlefield. I noticed in your criminal history in 1992, there was an arrest in Nevada for child abuse. Can you explain
Yes.
that?
Yes, ma'am. My, at the time, boyfriend and I had an argument. There was a gun in his nightstand that he had a permit for. The clip for the gun was in the dresser. When the DA reviewed the case, he said that that it never should have gone that far, and he dismissed all charges.
Okay, and then I have 1997, there was a domestic violence arrest in Nevada also.
My mother and I had gotten into an argument, which is how I found out I had a warrant for a traffic ticket that I thought I had paid, but did not. And that's where that arrest stemmed from.
Domestic violence?
No, I don't understand where that came from. My mother and I were in an argument, just a typical mother-daughter argument.
So just one more thing, you indicated to Ms. Ledoux that you believe that if your children said these things happened to them, that it did in fact happen to you.
Yes, ma'am. I fully believe them when they say these horrendous acts happen to them.
All right, well, I just said that because I wanted to let you know that our record indicates that one of your children, when they were being interviewed on more than one occasion by folks who were investigating this crime, said that his mother, Michelle Littlefield, was present and witnessed these offenses. She didn't stop Bert and continued to allow Bert to access him, allowing Bert to reoffend. He noted she saw it every time.
I will maintain again that no, I was never there. Had I have been there, I'd have picked up the phone and dialed 911. I'd have grabbed the children and gotten them out of there and brought them immediately to the nearest law enforcement, police station, fire department, whoever I could access first to report this.
And thank you. Any questions, Ms. Stokely?
Yeah, just to continue on, I'd seen the same things that Chairman Renata saw. Just to continue on with the testimony that the children gave to the Child Advocacy Center, but immediately after they moved in with foster parents. It's not unusual for children to be in an environment where they feel like they're not going to be out of their environment. If you were to say, is everything fine, for a child to be fearful of telling the truth, because quite often they fear retaliation from that very person that's doing harm to them. So it says here, after moving in with their foster parents, the children described physical and sexual abuse by Stockstill, some of which took place in the defendant's presence and in her presence. The children also said to the foster parents that episodes of physical abuse committed against them by the defendant, that you were there and that you laughed about it. So their story is very different from yours.
Yes, ma'am. Again, I would never laugh at that. That would be beyond the most cruel thing.
Okay, well, just, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm like Miss Ledoux. The things that happened to these children were horrendous. And
Yes, ma'am.
that's all I have to say.
I think that for now concludes our questions. Warden LeBlanc, can you tell us anything about Ms. Littlefield?
To report, since she's been here at LCIW, she's been here about 17 years. She hasn't had any write-ups since 2011, which is almost 13 years report-free. And only in that time period where she did have write-ups, it was about 6 write-ups. You know, with all of her documentation, she's attended a lot of classes while she was here. And it also shows on the risk need assessment score that she is low on that. So she has been busy, at least doing classes and whatnot while she's been here.
Good, thank you. All right, we'll hear from the folks who want to speak in support first. We'll hear first from, we'd like to hear from Mr. Redmond, Ms. Littlefield's father. Mr. Redmond. Is he still with us? Is Mr. Redmond? Mr. Redmond, are you there with us? He was there.
Yeah, now can you hear me?
Sir, we can. We can't see you, but we can hear you. We'd like to hear what you'd like us to know about Miss Michelle.
Well, it's while she's been there, she has attended many different classes, some of which were too difficult for me to even understand. But it was like a kid coming home to their parents with a report card. She was always anxious to tell me her grades. And I've always enjoyed her telling me that, oh, I got 97%. I got in the 90s. And so she was always telling me about her scores and her grades.
Great, thank you. Thank you, sir. Moving on, Ms. Dodd, could we hear from you now, please?
Good morning, Ms. Renata and the board. I apologize about not being on camera. My phone is not letting me get on, but I just wanted to take an opportunity and say over the last 7 years, Michelle Littlefield is in cohort 1 of our college and prison program at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women. I started Operation Restoration 8 years ago after my own experience for incarceration. I went to prison at the age of 19 and was released at 29. And just realized there weren't any services and resources available for women who have been incarcerated. Over the last 3 years, we've served about 2,300 women by providing over 17,000 services across Louisiana and a few other states. And the thing that I've consistently saw from Michelle in our interactions during her time in the program is that she does accept responsibility for not protecting her children. In this instance, I think that she has taken tremendous steps toward becoming a better person and focusing on the things that matter, which is changing who she is during her lengthy incarceration. I do recommend her being recommended for parole, and also knowing that she'll have an organization that will come to her aid and help her to reenter, reenter society successfully. But by providing whatever services that she may need, we can support with housing, food assistance, supporting her to continue her education once she is released, as well as a multitude of other things, access to counseling and healthcare, and all of the things that a person needs once they're released to maintain becoming a contributing member of society.
Right, and thank you very much for the work that you do and for being here to speak with us this morning. Now with Operation Restoration, we'd like to hear from Tracy Pratt.
Step up to the podium. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tracy Pratt. I'm the Higher Education Administrator at Operation Restoration. So I work at LCIW. I work directly with Ms. Littlefield, and I work directly with Dr. Marco Savaggio, who's the director for the tutoring program, and with Sarita, of course, who is my boss. So I just want to point out that we have an incredibly successful higher education program. Our students are completing bachelor's degrees. Several of them have been released. 5 of them are still continuing their studies. One of them, who was released just several months ago on parole, is going to be our very first graduate. She's actually been able to accelerate her courses since she has gotten out. All of our students have above average GPAs. And then, of course, with OR, we're going to be able to provide extensive wraparound services for Ms. Littlefield, and I'm sure she's going to be just as successful as all of our other students. I also wanted to bring this in. There's a task force recently with a resolution in the House of Representatives that has permitted the study of education in higher education in prisons, education in general, but they specifically talk about it, and they have noticed that here in Louisiana, whereas a college education reduces recidivism by 27.7%, and increases employment by 10.5% over 3 years. And so with the reinstatement of Pell programs, I really feel like Michelle is going to be just another wonderful example of success upon reentry, and we are here to support her in all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you much. Now we'll hear from opposition. Could we hear from Mr. Chris O'Brien?
If you don't want.
So if you want,
You want to wait just a second?
yeah, just wait just a
So that
second.
you-
In fact, if you want to just step aside,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. And then we'll take it from there. You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine right here. You're.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We met Michelle Littlefield and her sons when we became foster parents. We fostered her oldest, Justin, for 1 day, her middle son, Jesse, for several years, and her youngest, then Thomas, later Dylan, for several years. These are the boys when they first came to us. This is Dylan. By this time that you see in this picture, He had already been raped and sodomized multiple times by multiple men in the presence of and with the encouragement of Michelle Littlefield. This is her son, Jesse. He was with us for multiple years. By the time you see him in this picture, he had been raped, sodomized, had played a game called where Bert, excuse the language, ladies and gentlemen, but shit in his eye with the permission and encouragement of Michelle Littlefield. That had already happened to him at this age when you see him in this picture. We were told the boys had been neglected. Details of this came out in the court hearings that followed. The youngest was found wandering the streets in a very dirty diaper. We thought that was horrible, and little did we know that this was nothing compared to the horror that was to come. The boys' fits of anger became more frequent and violent the older they got. The oldest was very smart and defended Michelle completely. Both younger boys said they saw him and Michelle having sex. When I asked the social worker, how is that even physically possible in a boy that young, they assured me it was possible, and I didn't want to hear any more after that. The boys reported early on that Michelle hit them, punched them, and beat them. They told about her swinging knives around, cutting them with these knives, threatening them with these knives. Jesse had a burn scar on his arm that he showed me, and he said Michelle used a cigarette to burn him on his arm. He had frequent violent outbursts at school and at her home. The beginning of the horror stories were when he said Bert stuck a stick in his butt, it hurt, and the white stuff came out. Well, I knew enough to know what that meant. CPS was informed immediately, and this started a horror tale of what came out. The boys mimicked sex on a toy. They pumped a toy to show me what Bert had done to them. They chose, by the way, to call him Michelle rather than Mom. Dylan eventually told me that he was raped and sodomized by Bert and by Dewey Lee and other men in the presence of and with the permission of Michelle. He said Michelle cheered on the rapist while they were raping her children. Dylan told me that he often ate pet food because he was not fed. He told me about being bent over in the living room in front of a dusty TV. He could see Bert's reflection on the TV screen behind him, raping him. He looked down as the blood dripped off of his penis. Michelle was in the room encouraging Bert to continue. How can you know this and still have the same view of the world? My husband and I were unable to tell our families and friends the horrors that these boys told us. Because when we told anybody, they just couldn't hear it anymore. They said, "Stop, I can't even listen to this anymore." The boys reported Bert as a frequent rapist. Michelle initially claimed she did not even know anyone named Bert. She protected the man that had repeatedly raped her boys. It was discovered that she had been arrested for a minor marijuana charge with Bert Stockstill, so she did know him despite her denial. He was her roommate. The boys described being raped and beaten by Bert and by Dewey Lee and others with Michelle present. She cheered on grown men while they anally raped her boys who were younger than 7 or 3. She brought home multiple men to have sex with them. Boys did not know who these men were or how Michelle knew them. They described multiple men coming to their home, raping them. They described getting off of the school bus to find strange men waiting at their home to rape them on multiple occasions. Eventually, they described being placed in a ring of white powder with candles on it. They described a dark room and people in robes with hoods all around. They were raped at these gatherings. The boys talked about games with excrement they were forced to play. The descriptions were graphic and disgusting. Were hard to hear, of course.
Ms. O'Brien, we did receive your letter and we read it in great detail. That we're past our 3-minute limit. Can you just summarize the rest of what you'd like to say, please?
Boys had a rough life, and Dylan and I had several conversations as an adult where he told me he went to see Michelle in prison, and he said that he talked to her until he got her to cry because that was the only way he could get back at her. He said if he could get to her, he would kill her. He said he had a hard life, but because of the things in his head that he knew he had been through, he found it difficult to go on with his life, and he shot himself in the chest. And he died. Okay, date here. He died on October 21st, 2022.
You know what? Thank God for a little time in their life. They had you being your husband. To show them a different way and a different type of people.
Thank you.
So-
Yes, we could. It wasn't enough. Multiple psychiatrists, psychiatric, inpatient, upstays, with noise. It wasn't enough to couldn't fix it.
No,
Couldn't do it.
but they had you for a little.
They could-
And, thank goodness. Thank you for sharing. I know, we know that it's very difficult to come to something like this. And to recant, but you know what? To recant what was done is to tell their truth. And it's important that people listen. I do understand where people will say, I can't hear anymore, and they say, you know, they don't want to. But it's the reality that those children live through. So, you know, it's something that people need to know because it exists every day. So thank you for being brave enough to come here and being kind enough to have those children.
Thank you for being here this morning. We're going to ask Ms. Littlefield if she has a statement to make. Ms. Littlefield, is there a brief statement you'd like to make before we turn it over to the DA's office?
Yes, ma'am. At 30 years old, I'd yet again made another bad decision and choice because I didn't know there was other choices out there. In the classes I've taken, such as victim awareness, that it's the victim first and the victim needs to be believed. In classes such as thinking for a change, I've learned that there's more than just the one option or two options that you can see in front of you. And there's no way to go back and undo the bad choices and bad decisions that I've made. And I can't, saying I'm sorry means so little because of the horrors that they had to endure that I had no idea about. But what they say happened to them, I will not disbelieve. And knowing that they couldn't trust me enough to say, Mom, help. That tears at me that I wasn't there. I wasn't the mom they deserve. I didn't have the decision and choice making skills and tools that I have now to stop and think, to listen, to look around, to be present with more than just a body to say, hey, I'm here, but to actively listen to what's being said, to read body language when nonverbal communication is trying to be made. I don't have any more words. I'm sorry, and at some point in time, I hope that can be believed that I am so very sorry that I didn't pay attention to what was going on, that I wasn't there.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. We'd like to hear from the DA's office to close it out for us, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is stunning, but I think everybody in the room, this lady says she didn't do anything. She says she's legally innocent, that these children are lying. She just got up in front of you, and I wrote this down, quote, "I believe my children when they say that happened, but not when they say that she was there for it." She doesn't believe that. I have to take issue with the lady over here from Operation Restoration, which I was not familiar with. She says that Ms. Littlefield accepts responsibility. Her own client says she doesn't. She disagrees with it. She doesn't accept responsibility at all. To listen to her, she wasn't present, the children aligned. Why did she plead guilty and took the 30-year sentence? She's been sitting in prison now for years, and this is what she comes up with to say to this board? I want to thank Ms. O'Brien for being here today, because as a prosecutor who spent a good deal of my career dealing with cases like this, I know how difficult it is to get up here and even read this stuff, much less discuss it and talk about it. I also appreciate your service today too, because I know how difficult it is for you to listen to this. I don't have a whole lot to say to wrap up. These facts and this defendant are depraved. Any decent person would be made sick by them, because these crimes are an assault not only on the victims, but upon decency itself. There isn't much that the district attorney can add factually that isn't described graphically in both the First Circuit opinion and the DPP report and the victim impact statement. One victim is dead of suicide, and in a violent manner which adds insult to the injuries inflicted by the crimes committed here. The other spent years in treatment and now cannot even be found. All sex crimes prosecutors know that the horror for victims doesn't end upon conviction of the offender, and this case is a terrible example. These crimes are evil at a level of cruelty and depravity that is impossible to comprehend. And this defendant, as much as any, deserves to serve the full term of her sentence. Nothing can mitigate what she has done. If you have any inclination to grant parole in this matter, which I don't think you do, but if you do, please ask yourself one question. Could you ever reasonably trust this defendant within a mile of a child? If you have no questions for me, that's all I have.
No questions. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Wilson.
you.
Thank you for coming too, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Littleton, we do have opposition in the record expressed. There was no comment from the sentencing judge. Of course, we've heard from the DA's office, and the sheriff's office in St. Tammany is also opposed. And of course, you've heard the victim opposition today. I think
ma'am.
we're prepared to vote. Mrs. Ledoux?
For a plethora of reasons, my vote today is to deny parole. I will cite law enforcement opposition, lack of acceptance in the role of the crime and the nature of the crime.
Mrs. Stapleton?
Yes, I agree to deny. That would be my vote. Also, the nature of the crime and law enforcement opposition, district attorney opposition, and then the victim opposition, the parent of one of the children.
My vote today, Ms. Littleton, also is to deny. I will acknowledge you really applied yourself while you've been incarcerated, but I still see a lack of acceptance for what you did and the impact it had on your children. My vote today, based on the opposition that we have in the record and that which we have heard from today, is to deny your parole. Good luck to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
That concludes our business at the women's prison. We're going to sign off at 10:16. Thank you, Warden.
All right, thank y'all.
I need to start by commenting on this district attorney, because this district attorney, I feel like he took a script that I wrote and just said it all. I mean, to the point that there's no unpacking necessary. How long have we waited to see a mic drop like that? He calls out Tracy from Operation Restoration, saying how she says she takes accountability. Well, she's not. I take great offense to her. Yes, I take great offense. We are so sick and tired of it's just another like parole project of these people that come up here to defend a roach, to defend evil so that they can make a few dollars. Operation Restoration. It's literally what it is. It's like she has an apartment unit with a vacancy and she wants a tenant. They call them clients. She's going to get up and sell her soul to make a few bucks. It's unbelievable. And I'm so tired of it. And I'm just so grateful for the DA to get up and just say it all. He calls her this lady, talking about the mom. We can't call her the mom, this despicable thing. Sorry, excuse of a human being. And he calls her out. He says, I wrote down, to quote her. She said, she didn't do anything. I believe in my children, except believing in your children when they say what you did to them, what you allowed to happen to them. There's so much that I want to say on this hearing. There's Richard sent me an email. Today was one of those busy days. YouTube is not my full-time gig. He said, man, dude, check this out. And I did. And it's an hour and a half before the premiere, but this had to be what we premiere tonight. And normally this is the type of thing I want to watch 3, 4, 5 times and really let every word sink in before I unpack it. But like I said, I feel the attorney saying everything that we feel. That was amazing. It felt like if I could write the perfect script for this, that would have been it. His speech right there. Other things that were real nice to see is Miss Stapleton, the victim's advocate, our new Mr. O'Shea, in title. Her taking the time to lean over and look at the social worker and talk to the social worker and say, this is important. This is important. To recant what was done is to tell their truth. And again, that's what this is all about. This is to tell the world the truth. It's not just happening in a room somewhere where no one's going to see it. And of course, you have her supporters with their heads in the cloud talking about who knows what. It's something that we see. You can almost guarantee it with these parole hearings where the supporters come up and not only are they in denial, but they're all like roses and butterflies and rainbows and it's like they're all in this weird trance of crazy. Miss Renatza, she did stop her from talking, but she didn't say wrap it up. She at least had some sentences to say, the 3 minutes are over. We read the file. I'm looking to give her credit where it's due. I thought this board handled this just beautifully with such humanity and respect that it deserves. So, the little bit of information that Richard has, and I guess also the scariness of this whole thing. But let's first go over the information. So going back to 2009, a former Folsom man was found guilty last month of a slew of sexual crimes against 2 young children. And I don't know where the third child wasn't mentioned in here, but was sentenced to life in prison. And his co-defendant is facing 25 years in prison. A jury found Burt, formerly in Folsom, now living in Olympia, Washington, and his former roommate, Michelle Littlefield, of guilty after Littlefield allowed her children, who were both under the age of 6 at the time, to be this by him. And she's like, I had no idea. I had no idea. Who authorities say called himself a witch It took a jury about 6 hours last month to convict the roommates on the molestation, cruelty, and sexual assault charges. Littlefield faced up to 50 years in prison for a conviction of molestation, cruelty to a juvenile. She was acquitted. A jury acquitted her. Well, good for the DA for at least prosecuting it. I didn't realize this. They acquitted her of the sexual assault charges, which is what was mentioned there. But the judge, Rusty Knight, sentenced her to 15 years for each molestation charge, another 10 years for the cruelty to juvenile. Stockstill faced the death penalty or life in prison for the aggravated, and this should have been a death penalty case. And Knight sentenced him to life in prison for that charge and gave him the maximum sentence of 15 years for the molestation, 10 years for the cruelty to juvenile. Can you imagine the maximum that the legislation allowed at that time was 15 years? It's like you get more for purse snatching, for stealing a car, for anything but a child. Maximum, they'll say in the law, is 15 years. The prosecutor called this a bizarre case. Littlefield allowed her children, now 6 and 9, to be sexually assaulted and abused by her roommate. At the time of the trial, Joe, with the district attorney's office, said Stockstill claimed he was a witch, made the children eat feces, and sexually assaulted the youngsters during testimony. He admitted that he practiced a form of witchcraft called Wicca and had changed his name to Eon Woodcraft. He had since reverted to Christianity. Of course he had. Of course, he said, but despite their religious belief, a 12-person jury did not think it was acceptable for Littlefield to allow Stockstill to sexually assault, molest, and perform other acts of cruelty on her young children. Spokesperson Barbara Pepperman and District Attorney Walter Reid recommended mandatory life sentence. Was he not allowed to sentence her to life? Because here's the problem. The problem is that she gets out in 9 years. She gets out in 9 years, no matter what. 2033. Think about that. Like the DA's like, would you trust her within a mile of a child? That's scary. And she'll be in her early 60s. And just think about that. She'll look like an innocent grandma. I don't know what to say. There's so much that I want to say on this case. There's so much that I want to scream off the rooftops, but I just, I'm glad to see the unanimous no vote. I'm glad to see, I think the bottom line is that this story is being told, as Miss Stapleton said. What we're doing here is we are recanting what was done. We are telling their truth, and the truth was told, and evil was revealed to the world. And with that, I'll let you go. Well, now we are going to take a blast to the past, all the way back to 4/5/2021 to see a parole hearing, and it might connect to some time in the future. So with that, let's jump in.
Mr. Barrera, it's my understanding that your DOC number is 734469. You have a birth date of 6. You're a first-time felony offender. You have a good time date of February 19th, 2027, full term date of September 25th, 2029. You are currently serving 12 years for carnal knowledge and intimidating witness. Is that basically accurate?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
Okay. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Jim Wise. Mr. Wise will ask you some questions. Then the rest of the panel will ask you some questions and have a discussion with you as well. Okay, Mr. Wise?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I was, one of the things, your sex offender treatment there, what phases have you completed?
I've completed phase 1, 2, and 3. I'm currently in phase 4.
When will you complete phase 4?
In maybe 3 months.
Warden, can you tell us anything about his, completing his other, phases?
He has completed up through phase 3. I think he completed phase 3 back in October of 2020. So it's probably another 2 to 3 months before he completes phase 4, which is the final phase of the program, Mr. Wise. So he's probably got, I'd say on the low end, 2 months, maybe 3 months to complete the final phase.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I see you're a low risk. One of the things I want to ask you about, I was reading about some of the gunplay you had there, shooting a gun during, tell the board a little about that.
Yes, sir. I made that terrible decision out of fear. And I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time, and I made a bad decision. And there's really no excuse for that, but I do take full responsibility for my actions. And I'm sorry for any pain or fear I caused my victims.
All right. Okay. Now wait. I don't want you to keep going around and around. I want you to tell us what happened.
They got the record.
The board.
Of this. They want to know about the shooting incident. So explain that shooting incident to them. Don't sugarcoat it. Just tell them what happened. Just tell them.
I shot 2 rounds in front of that address into the air, and I got arrested shortly after. About 3 minutes after that, I got arrested for doing that.
Did you have an M4 assault rifle with you and a bottle of consumed liquor?
Yes, sir.
A Ruger handgun also?
Yes, sir.
The victim in this case was a 14-year-old?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wards, anything you have to say on behalf of Mr. Barrera?
He's been here a little over 2 years, Mr. Wise. He's had no disciplinary reports. He's participating in programming. He's very polite and courteous to the staff, gets along well with the other offenders at this institution. We've had no problems with BARRERA since he's been here. And he's very, like I said, he's active in programming and works in the South Kitchen. So he's worked, he's had a job even through the pandemic. He's continued to work. So he's been a pretty good inmate for the little over 2 years he's been here. No problems with him.
Yeah, he just made some bad decisions, that gun and things like that.
Oh yeah, his crime is not anything to laugh about. That's for sure. He has applied for interstate compact. He's trying to move to Missouri when he releases here. But he's done well within the institution, Mr. Wise.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Ms. Wise?
Sir, call out for the record how long you have served on this sentence.
I've served 3 years and 8 months.
Okay, 3 years and 8 months of a 12-year sentence. What have you done to address your substance use, drug use, alcohol use?
I participated in AA and NA the times that I could before the pandemic caused the program to be canceled. And I go over my 12-step programs that I've participated in the past in other facilities on my own. And I stay close to my Bible. I read my Bible, I study it every day, and I just take one day at a time and try my best to remind myself of how I used to be is not the right way to be, and to always try to better myself moving forward.
Okay, so if you're successful today, what's your plan to stay clean and sober? How are you gonna do it?
My plan is to continue going to AA and NA meetings on my own out there, maybe a 12-step program one more time just to freshen up my memory and to stay away from any negative peer groups or anything like that.
How many meetings would you attend? You're thinking about attending a week?
As many as possible.
Put a number to it. What would you think?
I'd say maybe 2 a week because my job plan is very intense work. I have to work a lot of hours throughout the week, but I would make a point to go into at least 2 meetings a week.
Okay, yeah, that's what I want to know. What would you make a point to go to? What is your job plan?
My job plan is to work for JSH Truck Repair and Towing in Matthews, Missouri.
Okay, okay.
That's where my father is working currently, and his employer has agreed to offer me a job.
Okay. All right, then. That's all I had, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wise. Mr. Barrera, tell me what you've learned in your sex offender classes that would help me accept the fact that you wouldn't do this again.
I've learned how to recognize risk factors, and I've learned how to keep myself from doing those. I learned how to catch myself if I'm in a high, medium, or low risk situation, and determine what steps I need to do to better protect myself and those around me. And at the same time, I just keep the risk factors going through my mind constantly. I make it a daily grind to live by that and make sure that I'm doing the best that I can to.
What are the risk factors to you? What are your risk factors?
My 27 risk factors is justifying, blame, deny, sexual lapse.
I don't think he wants you to name all 27 of them, but which ones do you focus
I
on?
want to know which ones apply to
For
you.
me, I focus on justifying, blame, and deny. I focus on not doing that. I take responsibility for any action that I do, point blank. I work on having a good support system. I work on my low efficacy to control risk factors because I tend to put myself down. So I remind myself that I'm able to do it because I've had the training and I know the material. So, and also substance abuse and things like that. I know to stay away from that. I know power control and manipulation and intimidation is things that I need to work on not to ever do again in my entire life.
Tell me what prompted you to be with a 14-year-old girl?
There is no excuse for that. I was just an irresponsible adult, not thinking straight.
Well, I mean, do you attribute that to alcohol, drugs, poor choices, sex, compulsions? What do you attribute that to?
I think it was a mixture of all of the above.
Had you ever done anything like that before?
No, sir, never in my life I've ever done anything like that. Never.
How much education do you have? How far did you go in school?
I have a GED.
Okay, you get your GED in prison or you got it while you were out?
I got it while I was out.
Okay, what kind of work do you do? What's your work history?
Carpentry, maintenance, boiler maker, scaffold builder, mechanic. When I got arrested, I was a aircraft boiler maker working in the refineries in the area.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions I have. Is there anything you'd like to see? Would you like to make a statement to the parole board before we vote?
Yes, sir, I would.
Okay.
I would like to say to the parole board, first off, God bless you for taking the time to hear my case. In doing so, I hope you can understand my humbleness, my honesty, and the remorse I feel, and the regrets for this despicable actions. Know that I have truly tried to rehabilitate myself through what was available to me, and it will not stop here. I plan to continue to strive to do better. I would hope my actions and what I've learned would help show that I'm a changed man, drug-free, and willing to learn to be better. Thank all of you for your time and consideration and giving me another chance.
Thank you, Mr. Barrera. We appreciate your words. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wise?
You know, Mr. Mayor, I went over there, you're a third offender. You had photos and sex with a 14-year-old and you was arrested on 6/23/17. And then 2 months later, you were in the firing weapon and later found drugs on you. That's just 2 months later. I think you should complete your phase 4. Also complete a good drug program, and I want to see you right back. Today I'm voting to deny until you get those phases and everything and a good substance abuse program behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Wise?
Sir, I commend you on the good work that you have done. You appear to be working on yourself, and I commend you on that. But at this time, though, I concur with my colleague, and I encourage you to write back when you're eligible. My vote is denied for the reasons already stated on the record.
Thank you, Ms. Wise. Mr. Barrera, you have 2 votes to deny your parole. My vote is going to be the same for the same reasons as my colleagues. But I like them. I encourage you to continue doing the things you're doing. Complete that sex offender program. You've got one more phase to complete. Substance abuse is something also that I would like to see you do a little more of. And perhaps the next time you'll get a more favorable report. But today you have 3 votes to deny. Your parole is denied. Good luck to you, sir.
Woo! I'm giving him a round of applause because that was an Emmy-worthy performance, maybe even an Oscar-worthy performance. I don't know if I'm just so skeptical, but I mean, he did shed a tear. And when he's going through the whole performance there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is pretty bad. I mean, it was like so rehearsed. He starts, then he takes his glasses off, then he remembers to rub his eye, but he did get a tear to drop out of there. I don't know that. I just don't buy it. I don't. Call me jaded, man. I'm just not there. But I mean, he could probably teach a lot of those who are getting nominated now how to do a little bit better at the whole tier thing. How was it seeing Miss Wise and Jim Wise and Mr. Marabella again? I know I liked it. It's crazy to say that because I avoid any hearing where it was Miss Wise and Jim Wise together in the same panel. I avoided it like the plague, but you don't know what you got till it's lost, right? That hearing took place on 4/5/2021. We are going to fast forward to today's date if you're watching it today, June 4th, 2024. We're going to go back to the panel that we just saw and let's see how they handle this. With that, let's go.
So Mr. Ramiro Barrera, you're classified as a first felony offender. You're currently serving a 12-year sentence. You were sentenced in Calcasieu Parish, May of 2018, for carnal knowledge of a juvenile and or intimidating or impeding or injuring witness. So it's a total of 12 years. Your parole eligibility was May 24th, 2021, and you have a good time date, February 19th of 2027. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, would you answer Mrs. Stapleton, please?
Mr. Barrera, one thing I wanted to ask you about, with the charges that was brought against you in this case. I've got carnal knowledge of a juvenile and, intimidating, impeding, or injuring the witnesses. The carnal knowledge of juvenile, I have that she was 14 years old when this happened. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
I have that the mother found naked pictures of yourself and other men on the phone being sent to the child. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Did you have sex with the child? Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And then later, the child said that she thought she was pregnant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you went over there with the gun, and did you shoot up the house or anything? Or they said there was 9 bullets shot. What's
Yeah,
going on?
I shot in the air. I
So
shot
was
in
that
the
just,
air.
was that just to say, because to the mother, she better drop the charges because here you are and you have a gun, which you shouldn't have had anyway? Is
That's
that,
exactly right. That's exactly right. It was dumb. I was out of my mind. I wasn't thinking straight. But you are correct. Yes, ma'am.
yeah, well, I see, I mean, we're gonna talk about the classes that you've done the classes. I see that you did the, sex offender classes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to tell me about? See, when I was reading it, it said other men were involved with this. Do you know anything about that?
No, man, I don't know anything about that.
Okay, just yourself. Okay. Well, you've done, tell me the programs you take. I know what I'm reading. You just tell me what programs you've taken and what you think you got out of them that would change your life.
Well, I took all the phase classes for the cognitive behavioral sex offender treatment. And that was a big help in giving me the tools necessary to recognize the risks, know the risk factors, and assess situations at risk levels, things like that, so I can know when I'm at risk or be able to prevent things happening in the future. That's what I got from that one. And I do AANA. I do general membership. I go every month for that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous. That's a big one. I completed the 12-step sponsor group, so that was a really important one for me too. It taught me a lot about making amends and just trying to do better and always keeping myself in check, trying to do the right thing basically, and to stay clean and sober because sobriety is very important. And especially now to me after everything that happened to me, because because I was under the influence. But yeah, I'm big on that. And I did anger management, victims awareness, thinking for a change, living in balance, which is our substance abuse program here. I got a ServSafe certification for managerial skills in the restaurant industry. Celebrated recovery, which is like a faith-based recovery program. Navigators program, Bible telling instructor. The Hearts program, which is healing and eliminating abusive relationships through scripture. And I did it even on my own outside of David Wade. I did a criminal course, which is something that I just found on my own, trying to reach out and do other things. And I got one certificate from there. It was the way to happiness. It's basically just learning virtues, morals, and things like that, how to be a better person.
That's were you sentenced to 12 years? Is that correct? And how many years have you been incarcerated?
I was sentenced to 12 years, 8 for the carnal knowledge and 4 for the intimidating the witness. I've done 7.
All right, if you could speak to your victim right now, what would you want to say to her? And her mother, because she was frightened too. She was frightened with the gunfire.
If I could speak to them now, I just tell them that I'm truly, deeply, very, very sorry for what I put them through, what I've done, and I just want to ask their forgiveness because I should have never put them through that. They don't deserve that, and I was just, I don't even know. I just hope they can forgive me. I'm sorry. That's all I can really tell them. That I meant no disrespect, and I'm sorry for any fear or mental pain that I've caused them or anything like that. Um, that's out of my character. I've never done anything like that before, and I'm just truly very deeply sorry. I wish I wouldn't have never done that.
Okay, I'm going to pass the question over to Ms. Reynolds. Thank you very much.
Mr. Barrera, I see even though I said your master prison record shows you're a first offender, I do see a prior sentence imposed in Texas, 5 years for evading arrest or detention with a vehicle or watercraft. What is that?
I was evading arrest charge that I picked up in Texas when I was younger.
What does that have to do with the watercraft?
Watercraft? I don't know
Says
what that means.
evading arrest
Wasn't on a boat. I was in a car.
in a car. I guess that was just, so detention with a vehicle.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's just more on the descriptive side of the crime on paper, maybe.
And you mentioned your AA work and your desire to remain clean and sober. And I noticed somewhere in the record, it seems as though that you blame this crime involving this 14-year-old girl. You claim to have relapse after 10 years of sobriety. So what was the trigger you think that made you relapse?
I was going through a lot. I had a lot of pressure on me. I was having problems at home with my wife on different levels. She was sick. She was very, very moody and like, and I was really struggling with that because I was really scared for her because she was so sick and nobody knew what it was. And we would take her to the hospitals and they would give her a sandwich and a orange juice and tell her that she's fine and she just needs to rest. And I was so frustrated with that. And seeing her go through all this suffering and pain day after day was really wearing me down. And at the same time, I had a lot of time on my hands because I was in between contracts from work. I had 2 months in between my contract. And so I had a lot of time and money. And I was worried about this and I was worried about that. And just I kind of had a lot of pressure on me. And to be totally honest with you, there's no excuse for the relapse. But one day I just got it in my mind that I just need a break. I'm dealing with too much right now. It's a little bit too much for me, feeling overwhelmed. So I went out to a bar, and one thing led to another. I found some drugs, and I started doing drugs, and I just kept doing them. And that was 12 years, 10, 12 years sobriety down the drain right there. Just because I couldn't handle the pressure. It was a lot of pressure.
Or when you were sober for 10 or 12 years, how were you maintaining your sobriety then? Were you going to meetings? How were you doing that?
I would go periodically to meetings, and my wife really, to be honest with you, my wife was the one that kept me in check. She was the one that made me want to be better and be the best that I could be so I could give her a better life and support her. So really my mind was not on drugs and alcohol at all. My mind was like on building my life, getting a house and supporting my family, try to build a family because we're trying to have children. And that was my main focus.
Do you have any children?
I do not because my wife unfortunately had urinary cancer. And
she was unable to have children. So we found out about that after my incarceration. Yeah. So that's why wouldn't have kids, but we did try for a few years.
And so you were married at the time of this crime also, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, so do you have any?
I just wanted to know, where would you live if you were released on parole?
Well, right now I plan to live with my father in Corpus Christi, Texas.
And you and your wife are not together?
My wife unfortunately has passed away. She passed away in March. Yep. So
So you would be seeking an out-of-state contract to go to Corpus Christi?
yes, ma'am.
Warden Dozak, can you offer anything?
Ma'am. Yeah, I wanted to just offer a little bit about Mr. Barrero. He hasn't had any write-ups at all, but he's been a good inmate here as far as his behavior goes. He's also very respectful. I will note he's also very respectful with staff, which we can all appreciate. We did apply for the interstate compact transfer, but it was denied, and I believe there was a miscommunication with the time in which they went out to check the property. So classification's been working with them to try to get that ball rolling again. However, we've also explored some different options, and as of right now, we are pending a approval with Tara Dupree with the Foundation Recovery House. And that's in Shreveport as an option. We haven't heard back from that, but we should be hearing back sometime, hopefully before the end of the week. And we're still working with probation and parole out of Texas to try to get that interstate compact process going again.
Do you all have experience with that Foundation Recovery House?
Yes, ma'am, we have not a lot of experience, but we've had a few, and then we've also had some through the BDCC programs that has discharged that they've had some success with it.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, I think, yeah, your father is on the Zoom, Mr. Arturo Barrera. We'd like to hear from you, sir.
We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Ramiro's father, and I'm the one that basically that compact commerce, it was approved. Basically, everything was going fine. The house was in the right place, and the utilities were on. And I had everything lined up. What happened was a miscommunication between me and the parole officer. We had the first meeting in our home, and that's where I verified that we was in the right track with the house location and all the requirements. Except when it came down to the second meeting, he had told me, okay, it's gonna be on a Wednesday, and then he said, but if you put out, because I told him the landlord was gonna go in there and work on some plumbing, right? So on a Wednesday, so he said, okay, if you prefer, we do it on a Thursday, 7:30. Okay, so we got into that date, and then on that Thursday, I had a service call because I'm a mechanic and I do calls on the side of the road, right? So I had a call at 5:30, and I said, well, I'll go to this call, get back by 6 o'clock, 6:30, be at the house. Somewhere down the line, either he was there too early or I was there 2 minutes too late, somewhere on there. And that was where the miscommunication happened. Next thing I know, my boys calling me that they had called the parole board over there that it was denied for that reason. But it wasn't denied because the house was not in the right location or nothing was out of place. It was just because of that meeting that I missed, basically, because if the man went, he went, right, and I wasn't there. But I'm confident if we apply for another compact, it's gonna go through, because in the first meeting he had basically already told me, okay, we're good here. I just need to come back one more time and make sure everything's in order, your utilities, your stove, your washer, the place, because I was currently renting in another place, but it wasn't where Ramiro could be, so I had to go find another place, which is this house. And it got a little bit complicated for me, not in the sense that I couldn't comply with everything that needed to be done. It was just that one morning that I wasn't there. And I know it's not nobody's fault but mine, because I could have just said, I'm not gonna take this call and just waited there. But the bills, financial responsibility. So I took a chance and I went, took that service call. And either I was 2 minutes late because it was at 7:30 and I was there at 7:32, and I waited, and then the day went by and I tried to get in contact with a parole officer, but no more
Mr.
response.
Barrero, we're
And
having
then,
some,
yes, ma'am.
breaking up a little bit for us, so let me just, the plan would be that, your son would live there at your home.
Yes, yes,
Okay, that's what we needed to know. Thank
yes.
you. Ramiro, is there anything you'd like to say to us before we vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my case. I hope you can understand my humbleness, my honesty, shame, remorse, and regrets for the crimes I committed. I have rehabilitated myself through the programs available to me, and I will not stop here. I plan to continue to better my life and myself. I'm a changed, drug-free, God-fearing man, and I know that I can't change the past, but I've taken the right steps to ensure that I won't reoffend in the future. I now have the right tools and knowledge to be able to identify triggers and risky situations to prevent reoffending and to be a productive member of society and a good family member. My time in prison has shown me that men condition themselves to choose between two paths upon release. One path is to return to a life of vice. The other is the path towards virtue. I reject my past life of vice and I choose to pursue a life of virtue. Prison life is a life of deprivation. I have skills that my family and friends needed, but I deprived them of the help I could have provided because I committed a crime. And for that, I am also truly very sorry. While I've been here, I've suffered many losses. Many of my family members have passed away, including my dearly beloved wife, who battled cancer for many years, as you already know. My mother, grandmother, and father have growing health concerns, and they want me there, and I want to be there to give them aid and comfort. One comfort to my father has the dual benefit of helping him with his work, which he needs very much. He's always telling me how much he needs me to go help him work. Isn't that right, Dad? And it gives me the opportunity to take over his business like he wants, because he feels like his time is short with us. My brothers and sisters also, and many other members of my family also need my help too. In short, my time at David Wade Correctional Center has shown me that time is what matters most. Time devoted to the service and benefit of family, friends, and neighbors. What scripture teaches is true. A man matures and puts away childish ways. I have turned my back on my past self, and I am devoted to living a just life. I will never cause you to regret sending me home. Thank you for your consideration.
all right, thank you, Mr. Barrero. We have a motion.
Let's move on. So I make a motion, we go into executive conference.
Can we get the roll call, please?
Ms. Bernard?
Yes.
Ms. Davidson? Yes. Ms. Blue?
Yeah. Mr. Barrera, we're going to be in executive session for a few moments to discuss confidential matters. We'll be right back. Just stand by.
Okay.
All right, we are back in session. We are prepared to vote. Mrs. Stapleton will be voting first.
Today I'm going to deny your parole based upon strong law enforcement opposition.
Mrs. Ledoux.
Mr. Barrera, I appreciate, first of all, your disciplinary conduct while incarcerated. I'm sure that the warden would like to have a dozen more like you in terms of, how you have complied with the rules. And the other thing I want to say is that you've done a great job, with your programming. We have some significant concerns, from law enforcement, and I echo those concerns, particularly with the, intimidation charge. And my vote today is to deny.
All right, and Mr. Barrera, I do echo what both of my colleagues have said, that for me today, the vote is to deny you parole based on the very strong comments and opposition expressed by law enforcement. So today, sir, your parole's been denied. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
And he's denied. I feel like we're looking into the face of evil again. Too bad he couldn't put on that, I don't know, Oscar performance. I mean, it's interesting, right? They basically said, hey, back in 2021, they said, just take these programs, come back, we'll release you. Not today. They got a new governor and a new board, and this board has seemingly, they are tough. I mean, I haven't seen all of their hearings, but it seems that they're not really approving people. We would have seen this guy gotten approved because he did what they asked him to do. Can you imagine that he does this while he's married to a 14-year-old girl? Then he goes to their house, he shoots in the ear to intimidate them because of the case that's against him. He scares them, and he still only gets 12-year sentence. It's like, what? His full term date is 2027, so he's getting out in 3 years no matter what anyways. But it's like, it's just hard to understand. You have the evidence on the phone, you have proof that you're doing this, and it's like the maximum sentence even after you go there and fire a weapon is just 12 years. It's crazy. And I do like how Miss Stapleton, again, the new victims advocate, how she's talking to him. She's like, so you did have sex with her? And he's like, yes, and I'm so sorry. And like before he can even finish saying it, she's like, yeah. She didn't want to hear it. He just like brushed him off. Like, just, it's not going to work on me, mister. I really don't care. And Miss Stapleton has a background. It's not just, there's a reason she's the victim's advocate. She is a major advocate for really, I think, much of her life for children, for little ones. And we'll have to do a segment on her one day because she is one of those special human beings, in my opinion, that we should all recognize. I don't have much more else to add. I don't know. I know the woman sitting next to his father, she didn't seem all too enthused about this situation. Maybe this is the first time she's hearing about it. It's like, ooh, maybe she's having second thoughts. But this board we got you don't maybe it's gonna start going around prisons. You just might as well not come up for parole, right? I know but anyways, thank you, Richard, for sharing this info. It is just crazy, I think, to think that, again, he will still be getting out very soon. And we are going to do one more hearing, and this is out of the state of Utah, and we are going to get a mic drop survivor stand-up moment in this hearing. And also keep an eye out on the bottom right corner for Sir Richard yourself, his wolf emoji. You might spot him. Thank you, Richard, for recording this hearing while I was gone. With that, I'll let you go.
The board scheduled a rehearing for today's date with the expectation that you complete the sex offender treatment program. You were committed to prison on case number 141912425, forcible sexual abuse, second-degree felony, 2 separate counts, minimum 2-year sentence, potential 30-year sentence. with a 90-month guideline date. The 90-month guideline date was up in April of 2022. The facts of the commitment offense were discussed in detail at your prior hearing. I won't go through the specifics of those today, but you should be aware that the board will go back and review the facts of the offense. It's apparent that this type of offense has a devastating impact on those that it's perpetrated against and has lifelong implications as well as serious public safety concerns moving forward. But the main purpose of today's hearing is to go over whatever's occurred since you last appeared before the board, and specifically that programming expectation. If you could go over what you've been working on, if you've been able to do any programming classes, that type of thing.
So while I did Focus, which is SATP, while I was waiting to get into SOTP, and in both of them, I learned healthy coping skills and how to express my emotions in a healthy way and not suppress them. I also learned what my high risk factors or triggers are and how to do my best to stay away from them. And say if one of them's like one of my emotions flares up and everything, I can work through that. Like I was saying, with these healthy coping skills that I've been learning through CPI, I've been just doing my best to take in everything I can and learn from the terrible mistake I made.
And then currently you're participating in the sex offender treatment program?
Yes, I am scheduled to finish that around July 25th of this year.
And what have been some of the takeaways from that program? What have you been able to learn?
Just healthy communication and being open and honest with my emotions, my feelings, and how to deal with high stress level situations that I may come across, whether it's work related or financially, or when I have romantic relationships, just the stresses that come with when we're trying to work together and be a healthy equal partnership versus how I used to be, where it was always about what I wanted and I didn't really put others' thoughts or feelings into play. And so now I see how my actions affect others, not just on the crime that I committed, but also just how the smallest thing, if I say something, how it can affect someone due to the ripple effect of that.
And this was a extremely brutal attack on Ms. Trujillo, and it wasn't a one-time incident. Have you been able to put some thought into the harm that you caused and some reflection on the impact that this has had on those around you?
I just, when I committed the offense, I also just was very self-centered, and like I was telling you, I was only thinking of myself. But now that I took that time, I've seen that everything that led up to me committing my offense that night was just continually treating her terribly and not treating her like an equal partner or the mother of my child. And I never showed her the respect that she deserved. And I went out of my way to just worry about myself and my children. But even then, I didn't even think about my children now that I've been learning these things, because if I was doing that, I wouldn't have put myself or Nakisha into that situation at all, because I would have been like, you know what, this isn't a healthy thing. And just from the very beginning, I would have realized, you know what, I need to get help. And I would have listened to when she's like, we need to do some counseling, we need to do all these things that she kept on trying to get me to realize, hey, you're not being a good person right now. You're making terrible choices and it's hurting me and the kids. So it just was a lot of time to reflect on when I go out of my way. I do everything I can to make sure that it is from a book that I learned, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Look for the win-win where everyone does good and is happy with the end result. It's just something I've been really trying to apply into my life of, you know what, it's not about what I want, it's about what's best for everyone involved.
The board did receive a institutional progress report. It outlines the classes that you've completed. You have been disciplinary free since August of 2021. So the board will have that to consider also. Ms. Trujillo, if you're willing and able, I would like to hear from you at this point.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. And do you swear or affirm that the statements you provide today will be truthful and accurate?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you. And go ahead with whatever you would like the board to consider.
Okay. First, I want to thank the court for allowing me the opportunity to be heard and hopefully begin healing in the correct way. Andrew, I hope that you listen to me carefully, slowly, and take in everything that I'm about to say. You impacted my life astronomically. The plea that you took really did you justice because of all the 7 charges you had facing, you would have ended up in prison for life. Especially because I wasn't your first victim, I was your 4th victim. I've spent the last 10 years in survival mode. I filled my life with lies, acting as if I was a perfect role model for other survivors. A career, a family, a life everyone always dreamed of. No one would have ever imagined that this is where I would end up, is what I always would say to everyone. But deep inside, I was and continue to suffer from the torture and turmoil you put me through. I'd already been through a lifetime of trauma before I met you. I was starting to heal and love myself, almost 18, and you promised to love me for the rest of my life. The only thing that I'd ever wanted was someone to truly love me. November 2013, our daughter, she was only 4 months old. Correction, my daughter, she was only 4 months old. She was in her crib when you grabbed me by the back of my shirt and threw me on the ground for the first time. The next year, I became your personal punching bag, word sponge, and sex toy. Every time came the promise, I'm sorry, it will never happen again. But in fact, every time you became more violent. Shoving your hands into my vagina when I had seizures or giving me drugs to calm me down after a fight only so you could shove your penis in my mouth. Strangling me, slamming my head into the floor, and let's not forget about the cold night of October 21st, 2014 that got you where you are today. Oh, great. It's the police. Open the effing door. Tell them it was rough sex, is what you said to me. Crying, beaten, and fighting for my breath, completely naked except for the blanket I threw on. I opened the door. There were 2 officers there, and for the first time, I knew it was finally over. You would never lay another finger or anything on me again. You crushed my world, leaving me with damage I never deserved. It was this mass destruction that sent me into survival mode. I turned into someone I'm not proud of, telling lies, cheating, careless sex, drugs. So I want to feel the true pain you caused. I became selfish and crazy, mentally unstable. I tried many medications, different forms of therapy, a treatment center, and nothing eases the war within. It's 10 years later, and I still wake up in the middle of the night with your hands tightly on my throat as I'm begging you to get off of me. Now, as the choices I made and the person I allowed myself to become because of your actions are catching up to me, and I'm starting life all over again, I realize I am nothing but a frozen teenager trying to love myself enough to heal and give me and my 4 babies the life that we deserve. I read your letter I so desperately wanted, thinking I'd magically heal, and I regret asking your mom. The lack of remorse pains me. The first line in your letter says, I'm not going to lie. When I write this letter, I'm doing everything in my power to empathize with you. So I'm not going to say I'm sorry. You deserve more than me being sympathetic. And you're absolutely right. You don't get to be sympathetic. I never wanted your sympathy or your empathy. I just wanted a genuine apology, acknowledgement, and true admittance of the hell that you put me through. I understand now that I don't believe you are capable of that. In your letter, you still found ways to blame me. You said we as if I was beating, raping, strangling, and emotionally tearing you down like you did to me multiple times. In 2015, you were sentenced. In 2015, when you were sentenced, I was told you'd probably do about 10 years. It'll be 10 years in October, and I am still terrified. And honestly, every other woman should be also. How do you look your wife in the eyes and tell her you don't care if you kill her with your hands squeezing her throat? What monster gets caught raping his wife and tries to tell the police it was rough sex? 10 years is 10 years is minimal for the 12 years you haunted my life and the internal war you caused within me. Someone once so soft, gentle, and kind and would do anything for anyone. You claim you are a better person, yet deep down inside, my heart and soul, I know you will do it again. And unfortunately, there will be a 5th victim because people like you don't change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo, for having the strength to appear today and provide such an articulate statement. It's very impactful. All of the concerns that the board has, I think that you presented better than I can present today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Mr. Reid, is there anything that you would like to say in response to what you just heard?
So just one of the things that I've been working on is just putting empathy into, because that's what we're being taught is if I can put myself in the other person's shoes, and that will help me to realize, you know what, those terrible choices and those terrible things I did to her, I wouldn't want that done to me, to any of my children. And so when I was talking about we, it was just so that I could explain that I understood that I did terrible, terrible things. And it wasn't me trying to make light of or any of those things. It was me genuinely working the program that's helped me to make drastic changes in my life and to show my remorse. I apologize it didn't show through, but I am so remorseful. And that's why when I said that I wasn't going to say sorry, is because my whole relationship with Nikisha was a continual, I'm sorry, just like she said. It was Instead, I wanted my actions to show all the things that I've been learning, all the life skills that I've been going through, showing that I'm sorry, because for the longest time, I've been able to go and say I'm sorry, but it's at a point where talk's cheap. It was time to put up or shut up, and I was showing through my actions that I've made genuine changes and that I only want to move forward.
The information presented in Ms. Trujillo's statement today regarding prior victims and the incidents of victimization perpetrated against her, the entirety of it, is all of that information accurate?
So there was previous relationships where there was domestic violence, but of committing a sex offense, Nikisha was the only sex offense.
In the brutality of the incidents of domestic violence and rape as outlined by Ms. Trujillo, is that information accurate?
Everything she said about the incident that happened that night and prior, where I would get violent and act out, was 100% true. The only thing I was disputing is that there was no other sexual abuse victims. That's the only thing I was disputing.
All right. The board will have a lot to consider. As a hearing officer, I don't make a decision in the matter. What I'll do is I'll get all the information from today's hearing, as well as the information in your disclosure documents, over to the 5 board members for their consideration. They'll deliberate over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Once they've reached a majority vote decision, they will mail that to you. And like I said, that likely will occur here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The board's decision will also be posted on the board's website once it's been determined. So at this point, I will go ahead and conclude the hearing. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.
The survivor just stood up and owned it, right? She took back the power. She's standing there. It's not often when we get to hear a survivor just really, really like with the power and the just the confidence of everything that she was saying. It was so powerful to see her, I feel, just take back that control while this little cockroach is sitting there in this little prison cell just running away. And I know we're all wondering, we do have the results. It's hard. He was granted, but he's not going to get out until September 29, 2026. And that is 2 years and like 3 months from the time of the hearing. Utah, they do things differently than other states. I guess they grant with a 2 year, 3 month window. And that means that he would serve a total of 11 years on his sentence. And he was just 23 when he picked up this felony charge. And it was really nice to see the way the parole board member complimented the survivor, said what you said is more, I guess, what the words you said, but basically a really strong compliment. And that was great to see. You can't take everything for granted. And then I like how he went after the cockroach and said, are those things that she said true? And there could have been a few reasons for him asking it, but sometimes a survivor needs to hear acknowledgement. And he said, everything she said about me was true. All the harm I did to her was true. And that's powerful. Whether you want to give him credit for it or not, I don't know. I've given up on giving because I'm always afraid of being manipulated. But it's powerful from this aspect of the survivor getting to hear it. And I think, then he said everything was true except for me having 3 previous sexual victims. I was physically abusive to them, but I didn't sexually assault them. But I thought it was good to end on that note, on a powerful mic drop of a survivor. And I know you saw Richard in there. He actually recorded this for me while I was traveling. So thank you, Sir Richard. And we'll keep rolling out these hearings if you keep supporting. And with that, I'll let you go.